did happen on the 97th mission that a guy by the name of A.J. Myers and I, in an F-4, found ourselves deep into North Vietnam on a volunteer mission. We got hit by ground fire and got out inverted, going through 1,000 feet, so 480 knots, dead in the cockpit, if you will. When we ejected, we had ground fire take off the tail.
So the moment of truth comes, and all of the training that you've had starts to fall into sequence, and you know that you're just going to have to eject out of the aircraft.
Hit and popped in the chute, and immediately hit on a furrowed hill that went down easily a half mile, and I went rolling down that hill at a high rate of speed.
I broke through the clouds in my parachute and came down. I was about a quarter of a mile off the coast of North Vietnam, and I could see some people putting a log boat into the water while I was still in my parachute.
I landed in a rice field. There was a little ditch off to my left and behind me a little, probably a foot or so deep. I ran for that, hunkered down, and trying to assess where my escape route was and what I could do to evade.
I crawled and got a staff and got down to the edge of the road, and the first truck whizzed by because I couldn't stop it. It didn't see me, so I got into the middle of the road, Moses-like, with my gun and my staff, and I caught the eye contact and stopped this guy. And I had managed to hijack a truck of North Vietnamese regular troops.
And I realized it's a horde of people. I would say about 300 people. And it's that's when I realized I'm going to be captured as soon as I hit the ground.
Heck, I was captured within a minute or so after I hit the ground. So they came over rather cautiously. I guess they didn't know what to make of me.
They're yelling and screaming, and a bunch of them come over, pull me up on the dry land, and strip me of all my equipment and my flight suit down to my shorts and t-shirt, blindfolded me, threw me in the back of a truck and covered me up with a tarpaulin and drove all night.
I had no intention prior to that time of ever becoming a prisoner of the communist regime. But when I looked at those 1 1/4 inch bores on those AK-47s that were 50 yards away, and I had nothing but my trusty little 38 with tracers in it, I reckoned that maybe I don't need to commit suicide today.
There I was laying naked in the road, and I would stay that way for a couple of days and be an object of display as we made our way down to Hanoi and the Maison Centrale, which is the French colonial prison known as Hoa Lo and colloquially as the Hanoi Hilton.
I think this place was built somewhere around the turn of the century by the French as a maximum security prison. It occupies a city block. It's an irregular hexagon, as I recall. It has a 2 to 3 foot thick perimeter wall all the way around it. The walls are 12 to 15 feet high. There are broken wine bottles, the French built it after all, embedded into the concrete on the top of the wall, and there's electrified wire above that.
When I arrived at the Hanoi Hilton, they escorted us into what we call New Guy Village. And New Guy Village is just really a few torture cells. When you walk in, the first thing that comes to your mind is a medieval dungeon, and you see these hooks on the ceiling and hooks on the walls, and you can see manacles on the table and leg irons on the floor and all of that sort of thing.
Then a holding cell in what we appropriately dubbed Heartbreak Hotel, a small 8-cell section, actually a 7-cell with 1 shower section of the Hilton.
Each cell was just about 8 to 10 feet in length, and it was about 5 feet in width. In the cell, there were 2 concrete slabs elevated off the floor, which were your beds. And at the foot of the concrete slab were leg stock for each bed, so that they could put you in leg stocks and hold you on that bed for as long as they wanted to.
Still blindfolded and cuffed. Then, at the appointed hour, I was taken down to what we affectionately knew as Room 18, which is an interrogation room. Placed in there, waited, blindfold and cuffs were removed. Waited for a few minutes, and in walks the bug.
The interrogation begins, and you try to hold the name, rank, serial number, date of birth as well as you can.
Every question they asked me, I just kept on saying name, rank, serial number, date of birth.
And then when you hold out and they want information, you hold out more, why then the torture would start.
Torture is the word that's commonly used, and it was because they did not recognize us in their own views as prisoners of war. We were war criminals, and they were intent upon breaking us.
I mean, it was rather scripted. We went through the rules. He asked all the questions, and with increasing irritation, and because of my refusal to respond to him, and suddenly thump. The guard behind me hit me in the side of the head, and I found myself on the deck, wondering how I'd gotten there so quickly. Instantly, the guard went to work on me as an explanation. This is affectionately known as the rope trick.
Well, a Vietnamese rope trick, it varied, but basically, they'd start off with your wrist behind your back, either out or in. They'd tie your wrists together with ropes or with steel handcuffs, and they'd bind your elbows together and cinch them tighter and tighter, and then they'd rotate your arms over your head until your shoulder's dislocated.
In my case, they always used manacles, which are like handcuffs. They're rigid, they're hinged on one end, and the other end is, you can screw them together, screw the figure eight together, and it's almost bone crusher tight.
And the guy said, your back is broken and your ribs are broken, and you should be careful. Then they asked me to do something. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they started all over with physical abuse, which included, hanging you from hooks and making you a piñata.
At one point, they threatened to execute me if I didn't start telling the truth. You think it's hard to believe I fell off a boat. You try to explain it to an over-suspicious interrogator who's heard every cock and bull story, and maybe you can sympathize with my position. I'd say I received my worst treatment not because I was much of a John Wayne, it's because I didn't believe me.
There were a couple escape attempts, and that started purges that would last for months at a time where people were brutally tortured.
Of course, our purpose was to live up to the code of conduct, and at the end, we came up with our own code because of the savagery, and that was we had to do the best we can, and we wouldn't give them something for nothing, and we would bend, but we wouldn't break.
Pain gets so bad, that pretty soon you go to a second line of defense mode, so to speak. And you felt that you just almost had to give them something in order to try to just get off of the hook and sort of get out of being tortured.
John, on that question, could you elaborate a little more on the tapping system? I'm fascinated by it, and I'm wondering, did the guards know? They must have been able to hear it, but they couldn't locate the source of it?
Well, no, that's absolutely wrong. They could hear it, and they could locate it, and when they did, you were punished severely, again, in the early years.
We had great calm. In fact, we were, as I rather indicated earlier, we were stage whispering under doors at the time for our internal comm. And it was, T-Bird 6, T-Bird 3, Roger 3, go. And you had real vocal comm. And
we used the basic tap code. We put the alphabet in 5 groups of 5, left out the letter K, and the letter C is first group, third letter, the letter F, second group, first letter.
One of the guys passed the tap code to me, and the guy who was next to me, he may have already had it, and we started discussing the issue then. So we got the tap code exposure.
The reason you can't use Morse code is that you can't make a dash on a wall. Where a tap can go through a thick wall with air pockets, with space, through concrete. You can tap on the floor, you can tap on a pipe and send it to another building, you can sweep the code, you can snap blankets, you can do any number of things to make note, and cough in code. You can always communicate in code.
After 4 or 5 years, they kind of gave up because we were in larger groups by this time, and we had a more regularized circumstance, but they still tried to keep communications cut off.
The mute code was developed by somebody who knew just a little bit of mute code, so the letters really aren't exactly right, but they're similar. And it was we designed it, a POW mute code, so that we could hang on to something, get our head up, and communicate with one hand.
After the shutters were open and we could see guys out, Russ Temperley came around to the end of the building and went through it in about 30 or 40 seconds or a minute. And while all of us were staring at him and memorizing as he went, A, B, C, D, E, F.
We didn't know that a man went to the moon until a year later, and that's when I was being hammered to go do something I didn't want to do, and got loose and got into a desk drawer and found an envelope that had a stamp of a man on the moon. And they caught me at this, and it was 2 weeks or so before I got back into circulation. I was able to tap on the wall with this prison tap code that we own the moon.
From late November of 70 until about mid-February, and I've forgotten the precise date, all known POWs known to us, all known POWs, and there were about 350 of us, were there in that same location. Well, this time we're in a separate section, and this one, after some machinations, we dubbed this one Camp Unity.
They took guys who had been in solitary confinement for 4 years and brought them out, gave them roommates. We had 6, 7, 8 big rooms there.
We had 3 different types of soup over the course of a year. There was 4 months of spinach soup, 4 months of cabbage soup, and 4 months of pumpkin soup, twice a day. You could almost mark your calendar by when the food changed.
It would not be a very helpful conversation to talk about the stuff that they gave us, again, to eat in the early years, although the last year or so, the diet improved markedly and they fattened us up.
And things were really on the improve. And again, kind of relaxing. We began to receive packages from home more frequently and more regularly, that kind of thing.
So we've got recreation. And they gave us some books. So we had some books. That's when those little gray things came out too. So we had something to write in and some pencils. And
now we knew what was specifically, well, more with greater definition. We knew what was expected of us. We knew what we could expect of each other and the others, what the seniors were doing, and there was a better administrative command flow, a better command structure now. And it was overall a very positive thing.
And it was the first thing that started me turning back to hope and reality.
They called us out one day in the plantation, and they make this announcement, and they read it, and darned if it isn't straight language. You know, the People's Republic of Vietnam and the United States of America, you know, have reached this accord, and they read the whole thing, and it's all straight. There's no propaganda words in it. So we know this is serious. And they read the thing, and it announces the end of the war.
It was a Sunday. About 0930, a couple of U.S. Army majors came walking through the compound of this place. And, you know, they're reaching through the doors and the bars and glad-handed us, and tears are running down there. Hey, what's the matter with you guys? This is a good day. There's nothing to be upset about. Well, we really didn't know. I certainly didn't realize what kind of a social issue we had become as a group.
they had the buses kind of separate, and they put us into platoons, if you will. We saw the 141s, and we saw the tents or whatever, and Americans in uniform. And you would have thought that we would have, broken ranks and run over, and none of that. We went in as military guys and we'd come out as military guys. We would hold formation. We don't know what the real protocol was, but when they called our names, we would go up and we would salute smartly and we would keep our cool.
And he says, Thornton, I walk up to the guy in the blue suit and said, "Hi, Colonel, Ensign Thornton's back aboard, sir."
We walked up the stairs or the ramp or however we got in the 141, sat down quietly, and it was quiet. And then we rolled, and when we broke ground, it was a cheer.
Pandemonium broke out in the airport. We were just going nuts.
The song has to be sung. The story has to be told, and it's the kind of content that's meant to make you laugh, make you cry, and show the resiliency of the human spirit. We're such incredible creatures.
Anytime that you're a professional military man, you're trained carefully and thoroughly, for the consequences of performing well in combat. And of course, if you do happen to become captured or in a war, why you're trained how to conduct yourselves there as well.
Somehow this surviving with honor, this keeping of a chain of command, however tenuous, this using your mind and trying to keep your bodies in shape. I was all broken up. I couldn't walk for a long period of time. All of that mixes and matches, and every guy does what he has to do in order to survive, but then I add that with honor.